Vaughan Jog Vlog.
Ang Lee's 2003 film Hulk is the first entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the best.
But I thought that the Iron Man with Julia Roberts Downey Jr. was the first MCU movie.
That's what most people believe, but most people also believe in love. Hulk 03 ends with Bruce Banner in South America. Sure, there's a sweeping cast change in 2008's The Incredible Hulk, but it does resume with Bruce in South America. Sure, people may disown both of these films, but you can't argue the effort to retain continuity. Backing up, the film tells the origin of Marvel superhero The Incredible Hulk. That's Bruce Banner, played by Eric Bana, a scientist exposed to gamma radiation, which has the effect of making you not like him when he's angry. There's really one scene that constantly brought up by fanboys as the signifier of this being a bad movie. That's the one where the Incredible Hulk fights a poodle? Yes, but that poodle is one of 3 dogs with Hulk properties. You wouldn't believe how many people tell me this movie sucks just for this one scene. That's like saying you're a loser because you lost a fight to a bear cub, which was accompanied by dual-wielding toddlers. Many a naysayer rags on the CGI visuals. I think they're pretty damn good, with today's MCU flicks looking all the more fake as events move further from reality. What you're calling a bad effect is better described as a disagreement on character design, and that brings me to Hulk 03's biggest flaw. The Hulk himself is not an accurate depiction of any previously established iteration. Consider for a second the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you were a fan of the 1987 cartoon series, you had a concept of how you expect the Turtles to look, and the live-action movie largely comes up with its own design for each, but people weren't turned against this change. By not looking to copy a previous design for the Hulk, the film earned some respect from me. That said, efforts to put Eric Bana's face in the design are ultimately misguided. The Incredible Hulk doesn't need puppy dog eyes to win over the audience. By contrast, the current design Hulk goes for a more classically retro appearance that doesn't rely on him being attractive. It's the best the big guy has looked on screen, but I think there's still room for improvement. Hulk 03 takes far more creative steps to convey a comic book aesthetic than any other comic book movie to date. Transitions between scenes perfectly evoke comic book panels. Maybe audiences just weren't ready for it, expecting something more by the numbers with clean cuts and occasional fades to black. I, for one, totally dig it. The plot of Hulk 03 is also unique, among others in the comic book movie subgenre. This is a character-driven film as opposed to plot-driven. It's a family drama rather than someone looking for a scheme to take over the world. I find it fitting given the nature of the Hulk's powers and his struggle for self-control, but it's not the type of thing I would expect to be a mainstream hit. Regardless, Hulk 03 delivers plenty of carnage to please the popcorn munchers. The Hulk takes on an all-star lineup of America's latest military vehicles. We're talking tanks, attack choppers, and an F-18. It's thoroughly badass, pitting the available against a larger-than-life work of fiction, and better than any battle I've seen in a comic book film since, with ever-raised stakes making for absurd scenarios. Ang Lee's Hulk brought disappointment at the box office, grossing $245 million on a budget of $137 million. Ramifications of this cannot be understated. In doing so, Marvel's films adopted a more standardized appearance. Disney moved to reacquire licenses and launch their own film versions of their heroes. No auteur had control over these films by committee, with directors becoming entirely replaceable. An assembly line of crews churned out films as quickly as possible, all looking to fit neatly in the now coined Marvel Cinematic Universe. Fans of the established characters felt indebted to see every installment, so as to not feel left out of the loop, making for a viewing pattern requiring a never-before-seen commitment closer to the viewing habits of a TV series than a film franchise. Yes, I realize I'm talking ill of the most successful film franchise of all time. Sure, it's good business for Marvel Disney, but at an expense that entirely cannibalizes the motion picture industry. Once Disney acquired 20th Century Fox, the writing was on the wall. No one is able to compete at the box office against a company with controlling interests, able to dictate the rules to venues, forcing their films to become hits. Even DC Comics' relatively better-known heroes can't leverage the production means to facilitate a cinematic universe that only Disney can bankroll. A few one-off movies may make bank with big enough characters, but that time is largely gone. COVID has accelerated the demise of the box office, which I prophesized years ago. We, the viewing public, realize now that we can get by without going to the movies. All small films are now released as video on demand, since they can't offer the spectacle to necessitate big screen viewing. You will never again see a surprise hit. The motion picture business is inching closer to a science of exploitation. Surprises aren't welcome. I'm hypothesizing that remaining movie studios will need to merge to combat Disney in the arms race to acquire and manage the licenses that people care about most. See, it's easier to get youth hooked on properties that have a rich history of proven sales figures than it is to create anything new, because comic book movies originate from source material found off-screen. They're ripe for endless rebooting. You think Chadwick Boseman was the only Black Panther? The same way I thought Michael Keaton was the only Batman. When a reboot is announced, there's news that goes viral with reactions all the way through opening weekend. Original properties can't reliably build the equivalent buzz, and so they go unproduced. You think anyone would give George Lucas money to launch Star Wars today? Without a pre-existing fan base to assure profit, they'd pass up Star Wars without blinking an eye. And the same applies in the streaming world. You could bust your butt for decades behind the scenes and be cheated out of your big break to present your characters simply because the more famous Duchess Meghan and Prince Harry want a production deal. It pains me to see kids today fawning over the characters of their parents' and grandparents' time. At least when I was a kid, we were first in line for the fresh Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles craze. What do your kids have that's actually theirs? I give Ang Lee's Hulk from 2003 3.5 out of 4 stars.
You just watched a video from my son. He's about 40 and lives in my basement, ladies. So subscriber and notify the bell for ringing.
Okay, I said what you wanted me to say. Now do the goddamn dishes.